Get this, there's a new app that changes news headlines using artificial intelligence in real time. Now the goal is to remove clickbait, but think of how quickly that could turn into something like groupthink or virtue signaling. Are you ready to let an AI guardian rewrite the outside world to tailor to you? Well, that's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about in this video. And new research is revealing that humans aren't just struggling to identify what was written by a bot on social networks. They actually think that the bots are acting more human than the real humans. We're past the point where we can trust our instinct on something like that. TikTok is working on a new massive artificial intelligence that will instantly be able to review every action, click, and comment you've ever made in the entire history of the time they've been recording your actions on TikTok. All on a fly, all in context, all in an instant. Google is now testing a new generative AI model that generates news for, get this, news organizations. A Reddit user kind of outsmarted an AI content farm, but now the AI content writing farm is writing about being outsmarted by the Reddit user to get more clicks from Google, which, come to think of it, I'm now resharing. So who's the creator and the consumer at this point? I don't even know. I'm also gonna just squeeze in some comments about the rise, fall, and upcoming reincarnation of virtual influencers. But whether there's a place for human creators like me to coexist alongside them, I don't really know. Okay, so let's start with a couple of these news apps that are rewriting headlines for you and think through both how they work and what that means for us. So this artifact, I think it's just like a news aggregator, nothing super special that I've seen in it yet. Although what it's getting a lot of press for recently is this ability to notify, basically flag them if it's clickbait. And the reason why that matters is because if enough people flag it, it actually rewrites the title, using AI to read the entire article, come up with a better summary that they think is more neutral, put it at the top. But this flagging system is temporary. They're just learning what actually should flag the system. They're training their own AI model on that, and it will soon automatically change the title. Okay, so preparing for alien contact, who holds responsibility and ethical guidelines. Clearly not clickbait, but look at this tab. So you see down there where it says mark as clickbait title, which I'm not gonna click. That's the signal. Now this isn't actually the first time I've heard about this concept either. So this website called The Boring Report, I came across this probably 4 or 5 months ago. Doesn't seem to be as big of a project. This other news aggregator was started by the Instagram founder, so they've just got more like cloud and money and stuff. But they both bring up the same conceptual problem. Actually, it's a benefit until it's a problem, or it's a benefit as long as it stays in the right mindset of the community that's using it. Basically, you're shifting the editorial responsibility away from the writer of the article and into the consumer, which to me just triggers that kind of icky feeling that you might be surrounding yourself with yes men. An echo chamber that wants to tell you exactly what you want to hear, not anything new. But that pendulum swings both ways, so I get clickbait is a problem. Correcting a fraudulent lie or a scam, like that needs to be fixed. But something like this article, WorldCoin struggles to find new users willing to scan their iris for crypto. I bet you could also write that in a completely honest way that's like 100,000 people signed up within the first week of the orb or something. It would just be framing the data in a different way, a more positive light or in a negative light. Yeah, like see, look at this. In comparison to 2 million signups is quite a success in a lot of circles. Why did you title it that way? It was an editorial choice, and I guess that's who they want this to go to. People who are, don't want to be upset by WorldCoin. As someone who's got a lot of titles that you've seen on my YouTube channel from ChatGPT, where I take my entire article and I put it in there and I say, give me some titles. And a lot of times I'll go with one of them or make a variation. I've seen it do the gamut so many times of both sides of the spectrum. Could you imagine if every headline that people disagreed with or they hated on, they could go in there and say, this is clickbait? And then I think about what Elon Musk is saying about like building this TruthGPT, and like imagine something like that being plugged into X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. If it's generating like truthful headlines for each person, but they subjectively sort of see the world different, everybody's truth might look different. Like what is that gonna be? Is it gonna be a universal truth? What the heck are we getting ourselves into? You know what I mean? But on the other hand, I will say that if somebody was like, this will rewrite all headlines so they have more of the positive part of the article, I'd probably take it. I'm kind of sick of being inundated with negativity. And I know that would be bias. It would be a choice that I probably would just want to, just want more happy bias in my life, to be honest. So I'm not better than any of this. I'm just pointing out that we should be aware that it exists. So some interesting news that came out of a Pentagon research paper. This study found that an AI can accurately tell if a text message actually violates social norms or not. So the researchers utilized GPT-3 and a data parsing method called zero-shot text classification. And it identified if a text message either fell into the category of social norm or outside of it. Instead of comparing it to other text messages that were labeled by other people, this process actually relied on how the people reacted to what they read, identifying if social emotions were present, like guilt and shame. That was their signal for the norm violation. And the reason why that's really interesting is because that's something that can kind of step back from any particular language You don't even have to really know a ton about the culture to know if somebody was offended by what someone else said. So I thought that was interesting how they focused on the actual person who can be offended. I mean, because imagine if you're TikTok, you can tap into the youngest generation of Americans and have so much understanding of what social norms were broken, at what time, in what context, even personal DMs, that's all part of their data set. And maybe some of that antisocial behavior would actually lead to more entrepreneurial or business leadership. Or maybe it would be a negative characteristic that just makes somebody antisocial and not that productive. I'm not really sure. But there would be certainly valuable insights that could be data mined at a minimum for advertisers, but even more from a national security point of view. Not condoning, just explaining. So let's talk about how bad, actually beyond bad, people are at figuring out if what they read online was created by a bot or a human. And I say beyond bad because it's actually negatively correlated. If you think you're very sure that it's a human, it's actually more likely a bot than a human. So a study published in Science found that AI-generated text on a social media network is actually found to be more human from the test group than the social media posts that were written by humans. The researchers also tried to examine whether or not people were good at identifying disinformation versus accurate information. And this was done on Twitter or X, so it was a tweet format. And they found that if the article was disinformation and it was created by a human, they were better at figuring that out, identifying that a human was trying to manipulate them. When it was the AI that was generating the misinformation, trying to deceive them, they were less good at identifying that it was misinformation. So when it comes to disinformation on Twitter, treat it like whether or not you feel like you can handle one more drink before you drive home. Don't just rely on your own instincts. Now let's talk about Arnold Bowen's thoughts on the rise and fall of virtual influencers. Now this topic hit me especially hard because I'm worried about virtual influencers actually just dominating this entire AI space on YouTube and not having much of an opportunity for me. And the truth is that these avatar crafted, non-human VTubers are better for brands in a lot of places. They're immune to age, they don't take days off, they're able to tailor their exact image to the aesthetics of a brand on a whim. So far, these kind of VTubers have had more of a rise because of the benefits that they offer, but not so much of a long term, like a quick plateau and a bit of a decline. But sometimes real influencers or micro influencers, like I'm trying to be, they can offer more of a human connection, some raw emotions, the kind of realism that the virtual VTubers can't yet, and maybe won't for, not forever, but for like maybe another few years. And even at that point, there might be more of a coexistence. Like certainly faceless VTuber, like AI generated everything kind of videos will have a place. They could just customize messages and they could always be like perfect 24/7, whatever you need kind of stuff. But maybe a human touch, the imperfections, the like, I'm tired, sorry I didn't upload guys, like this is what's going on in my life, might always be something that has its own little niche. But I will say personally, I maybe like 15 or 20% of the other AI YouTubers that I'm following right now are faceless like AI YouTubers. Like it's that same pattern where I see probably a script that was at least somewhat generated by ChatGPT and then translated using text to audio voiceover tools like something like 11 Labs with lots of B-roll, which we've seen from Premiere. There's tools that are coming to automatically put B-roll in the future. And then like words on screen, which were probably already typed out in the first place. So it just needs to be one of those tools that like kind of punches them up a little bit. And I'm not totally knocking on it because sometimes they're very thoughtful, but sometimes they're also just tools for mass production. And in the ones I'm subscribed to, I know that somebody really did have to read and think about like what the topic is because they'll introduce, a new artificial intelligence model and they'll go into the weeds, they'll break down the paper, they'll like have to put the kind of things from the research paper on the screen that have to be thought through. It's just a fact, which I think might be great. Just because they don't have to be like an on-camera personality doesn't mean that they're not sharing real value, breaking down complicated concepts for the regular person that we should be hearing. So yeah, there's a place for it, but I'm definitely like, one of the reasons you see videos every day on this channel is because I'm definitely trying to like carve out a little spot before it becomes too late. Okay, so here's an interesting story, which I'm pretty sure is real, but actually there's a partial chance that it isn't. And it's about this Reddit user that purposely made up a fake character expecting this content farm, this content mill to take what he told them and then like duplicate it all over the place. It was meant to expose how content scraping is happening from that Reddit thread. So all these fake articles on this guy named Glorbo end up becoming like all this news, and it's clear that the content farm is scraping from Reddit, even to the point where it's just automatically generating all this nonsensical lies as if they're articles or updates. But once that became its own story, which is how this guy outsmarted the content farm, that ended up on the same forums, which also got scraped and turned into articles that got way more attention. So the content farm's back in the driver's seat, loving all this energy about being exposed, but still having the same model to make money. Unless it's like what I've had a thought in my head, which is like Inception on Inception, and now I'm just the newest victim falling into the prey of the articles, like in an ever-referencing like strand of misinformation. But it's probably real because this guy, Ben Edwards from Ars Technica, wrote about it, and that's a pretty legit place. Here's the original thread. I'm so excited that they finally introduced Glorbo. Honestly, this new feature makes me so happy. I really just want some major bot-operated news websites to publish an article about this. Update, we effing did it. The article's been published and I doubt they'll make another one from this post, but I love how everyone keeps rolling with it. Keep up the Glorbo posting. And then I like how it just gets silly. This is the best change they've made since the Klaxai neutral playable. Like, I think this is all fake. I mean, I don't really know World of Warcraft, but seems funny. Seems like a good troll move. Next up, let's talk about Google's new Genesis AI and what that means for major news organizations like the Washington Post and the New York Times. So Google is currently experimenting with the new artificial intelligence called Genesis, which can process information and produce news content, which is something all large language models can do. So like, what is Genesis offering to a major news organization that ChatGPT doesn't? I don't know. But it's reported that this tool is being pitched to major news organizations. The New York Times, the Washington Post, News Corp, which owns, Fox News and all that stuff, and the Wall Street Journal. And Google has this vision for this product Genesis to be a journalist's best friend, the tool that they use to write news articles, supposedly leaving the journalists to go do more important things. So this woman, Jennifer Critter, she runs the Google News communications team, so they're the one leading this Genesis project. And she clarified that the tool is not intended to replace journalists. Now I have started to trust historical facts and dates and things like that from these large language models more than I would have ever expected. Doesn't mean they don't hallucinate all the time. It just feels to me like real humans hallucinate, get lazy, fake it, have bad references just as often. It's just my feeling, no science there at all. So I'm not necessarily opposed to generative AI helping out a journalist, but it does seem to me like journalism is turning into more of a human quality control check kind of a job. And Google probably just wants to be there to control the information, to just have their pulse on the industry. So we'll see what happens to Project Genesis. All right, now let's talk about ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, and their huge ambitious artificial intelligence plans, and of course, their incredible data source, which better than Elon Musk is getting from Twitter right now, TikTok. So TikTok is reportedly developing a new system called SCM, or System Chat Model, and it intends to make a chatbot like a ChatGPT interface, but with an infinite input length. ChatGPT can handle about 8,000 words. There's some other models that go up to 100,000. There's some theoretical papers that have come out of Microsoft that might go up to 1 billion. From what I'm reading, it's a similar system what Microsoft released a few days ago to actually get to infinity. I guess the entire internet or whatever, as big as data as you want to put in the input field. Point is that if you do this, you get an infinite memory. You get the entire history of somebody who's been on TikTok that you can access on a whim because it's all held in the same large language vector space, so you can just talk to it, which means meaningful long-term conversations. An AI inside of TikTok that says, oh, I remember when you liked that one photo 2 years ago, and let me remind you about what you were feeling that day and the other things you did that day. It'll just be so much of somebody with like a perfect infinite memory who was with you on that entire journey on the social network. Okay, and now I think what they're doing is really close to what Microsoft's LongNet is. So if you want a bigger deep dive into that, where I had like a metaphor and everything about like a city and a telephone system and all that, you can check out this video with the cool looking chair on the thumbnail. But basically you can use like some heuristics and some kind of like crypto sort of methods to like group and have representatives and group and have representatives. And all of a sudden these things can scale to these huge input lengths, which is just so crazy what it means from a long-term memory point of view. If you like this kind of content, smash that subscribe button.